All right, welcome everyone to Music in Color. So this is our last event of the season, and it's transitions from high school to college. And so this is an event with a couple in collaboration with Project 440 and the Youth Advocacy Council.
So before we begin the event, we just wanted to let y'all know a bit about who we are. So firstly, what is the Youth Advocacy Council? And as you can see here on the right, we are a group of Philadelphia high schoolers and Project 440 mentors dedicated to spreading positive change using the power of classical music.
And so more specifically, what is Music in Color? And so this is our third year in Music in Color. And so basically, Music in Color is kind of like a community forum where we have discussions about race, representation, diversity, and so many other topics in the music industry. And we try and feature professional musicians who generate positive social change through their careers.
So before we begin, we just wanted to introduce all of our wonderful speakers who are all former YAC members. Sorry, I cannot talk today. So first we have Maria Karakoussis, who's a pianist and harpist at J.R. Masterman High School, and who is now a freshman at Princeton University studying molecular biology and was a youth board representative during her time here at YAC. We also have Ryan Williams, who was a violinist at the Philadelphia High School for Creative and Performing Arts, and is now a freshman at Westchester University studying psychology. Next, we have Kinton Silvani, a harpist from John W. Hallahan Catholic Girls School, and who is now a sophomore at Case Western Reserve University, double majoring in international studies and education and minoring in social justice, and was also a youth board representative. We also have Malinda Lisette, a flutist from the Philadelphia High School for the Creative and Performing Arts, who is now studying with Mimi Stillman at the Boyer School of Music with a flute performance major. We have Marquise Bradley, who was a clarinetist from the Creative and Performing Arts High School and who is now studying at the Cleveland Institute of Music, focusing on clarinet performance. And we also have Myles Bell, who was a violinist from B. Reed Henderson High School and who's now studying at Duke University, majoring in biomedical engineering and minoring in mathematics and machine learning and AI. Oh, sorry. So that is it for our speakers, and I will now pass it on to start the meeting. Thank you.
All right, I will start us off with the first question. What were some contemplations you had about college, and do you still have them now? So, if anyone would love to answer this question, we can start off with you first, and then from there we can kind of like popcorn. If you...
Okay, I volunteer to go first. Definitely one of my major things was definitely like fitting in college or like finding my own sense of community because like my college was totally different from my high school, and I was worried about like how am I going to be perceived, like how am I going to be viewed, like will I enjoy this, will people like me here? And I would say going through my first 2 semesters, I would say it does get better. And I no longer have that fear because like throughout it all, you kind of like sort of like find your own community. You learn to like advocate for yourself a lot more too.
I'll go next. I guess my main thing with school was really finances. That was really the only concern. Um, it was really important to me as a first generation college student to just get an education the smartest way and the most effective way possible without putting myself and my family in debt, or at least in massive irreparable debt studying music. So um, the only thing that I really paid attention to was money. Obviously, I only applied to schools that I wanted to attend and teachers that I wanted to study with. But when it came down to it, it was the only thing that really mattered was money.
Oh, I can go next. So I think one of the really important things to me when I was trying to make my decision was like, how am I going to balance music at the same time as doing these other things like biomedical engineering and stuff like that. Because music was just is so important to me, and it's something I think about a lot still. Like even 2 years later, just how am I going to keep that balance and maintain um, my maintain my passion for it. So that was definitely a big decision going into my a big thing I was thinking about going into my decision.
I think throughout the application process, I was very concerned about, I think a lot of the things that have already been said with regards to kind of how I will fit into my, the atmosphere at the school I went to, and then also figuring out how I'm going to manage, not just to afford it for, you know, signing on and saying, yes, I want to come here, but also 4 years down the line. It's for most schools these days, they're getting more expensive every year. So like the tuition you start with is likely not going to be the tuition that you end with. And so those were things that were really going through my mind, really a lot. And I was grateful to end up at a place where they have frozen tuition at where it currently is, and it hasn't gone up. And I think just kind of the initial fear of going into the next stage of life. Like I knew that I wasn't going to go to school in Philly, and that's not really what I wanted for myself. So there was a lot of excitement / anxiety around that for a little bit once I committed.
If no one else has any other comments, I can move on to the next question. So kind of a little bit of what we already talked about wanting to fit in this new community. And so like compared to your high school friends and maybe your orchestras and all that kind of stuff, how do you now feel in this new college community, whether it be in your orchestras or your everyday classes or clubs you've joined? How do you think they differ, and if you like it better than you did your high school community?
I'd love to get us started on this question. So I think, at least in my experience, sorry, can everyone hear me all right? Okay, perfect, thank you. So I think in my experience, high school held a lot of sort of self-insulated groups. I mean, everyone knows the stereotypes about cliques and like different friend groups, but at my high school, like the band kids would hang out with the band kids and the sports kids would hang out with sports kids. In college, everything is so much more like permeable across groups. And it's really, really easy to make friends across all different disciplines and majors, areas of study, interests, service activities. I mean, there's just like such a wealth of things to do every single day. And I think it's just a lot more effortless to meet new people and form connections. And I think to kind of go back to the last question, that was something I was looking for in my college experience, really gain a network of both peers and professors who would, just like that I might have for the rest of my life, but who could also help me find careers or find new areas of interest for myself. I think college really should be all about expanding yourself as a person and not staying, sort of tethered to what you felt comfortable with in high school.
Yeah, I would agree with what Maria was saying. I think one thing that really struck me about the friends that I made in college was that we were just all generally more interested in what each other was involved in, if that makes sense. Like I feel like a lot of my friends in high school, they didn't really know I played in orchestra, or they didn't know that I did a lot with violin. and not that they weren't interested to know that about me, it's just that everyone was so busy doing their work, trying to apply for colleges and things like that. But now that I've met my friends in college, like they'll ask me like, like when are you performing next? Or like when's your next violin thing? And it's really like important to me now that I have friends who recognize that that's something important in my life. Because it just makes me feel so much better, that my friends are interested in what I'm doing. And and even in classes as well. Like I feel like when I was in high school, I just like went to class because that was something I was supposed to be doing and something I had to do. But now, like because I have more choice in what classes I take, I feel like I'm genuinely interested in like what I'm learning about in my classes. So I think those two things are really cool about the college experience.
Yeah, when I think about this question, I became really grateful because I've been blessed to have some really great friends both in high school and in college. And granted, I went to some very cliquey high school schools in general. My school currently, CIM, is less than 350 people. So most people know each other and know who they want to spend time with. Uh, but I think what has changed is how I view my acquaintances and some of the people who I'm not spending like my Saturday nights with, but people who are really cool, very genuine, who I may not interact with outside of the scholastic or professional setting. I really value those relationships more and more than I used to, and make sure, if to stop in a hallway, talk to someone. Granted, everyone's really busy running on to the next thing, but those small interactions really matter, especially on the days where I'm not able to just hang out with my friends for a few hours, but it really is just one thing to the next. So that 2-minute conversation I have in a hallway with like one of my studio mates or someone I was in a class with really starts to make a difference and can brighten my day sometimes.
I definitely do agree I definitely do agree with what Marquise is saying. Um, I felt as though in high school, like I was like I think it was fine. Like socially, I thought I was doing well. And then when I got to Westchester, I was kind of like scared, like no one's like me. Will they enjoy me as well? But also I feel as though a lot of people who aren't like also into your interest are also make it like very like nice to talk to because they're also into like different things that you know nothing about. Even like what Marquis said, the small little like interactions, like, hey, I noticed you had some so and so like on your water bottle. Like, are you into them? Or like, oh, I noticed you played violin. And like, I feel like the fact that people don't know as much about you since like makes you feel like more appreciated, I guess. So like telling people I like played violin and went to performing arts high school, I think they like really like admired that and like found it like really interesting. So yeah, like talking to like anybody and anybody you can is definitely like something you should definitely do.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. I think that I'm in a little bit of a different position because I don't live on campus and I never have. I've always commuted and stayed at home with my parents. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I also had really strict parents. I'm Puerto Rican, so my mom was not letting me out late to do anything, even though I was in college. Um, and that was like a big hassle for me. But I think that in general, it gave me a lot of like time and space to really prioritize and recognize what college is for me. And for me, it was getting a degree and a certification in something that I wanted to pursue for the rest of my life. And that has nothing to do with anyone else other than me. And that doesn't make any other person less important. It makes them actually extremely valuable because as a musician, you're a collaborator, you're expressing things that are happening, you're reflecting stuff that happens in the world. And if you don't have a good group of friends to help you through all of the challenges that this world has, um, then you will easily get lost, especially in a place like Philadelphia. Like I stayed in Philly because it was just the best thing for me. I have a great music teacher and a great relationship that I was able to build with my family for through actively choosing to stay home and be a participant in the household. Um, I guess greater than oh they birthed me. I have to live with them. So in a lot of ways, I think recognizing the value that all relationships have, even the ones in high school. Because me and Marquise knew each other. We're best friends from high school, and I still bug him every day. So, well, not every day. We're a little bit better now. But yeah, no, I mean, we still bug each other from time to time, and I still go to his recitals online. I have friends from high school that if they can't make it to my recital, they'll go online. And, it's really about the values that you have and seeing whose values line up with yours and what you can do with that. And also just opening your eyes to the world. Like, that's what college is. College is a concentrated place where you can meet so many different people from so many different majors. Like Maria said, just so casually, I have friends from gen eds that I'll see on campus, and we'll like just go get a coffee, and it's nice to not talk to a musician because it's irritating. I talk to myself all the time. So I think it's really about figuring out yourself so that you're able to actively choose the situations and the environments and the people that you want to be a part of.
Did everybody get a chance to answer? If not, speak now. I'm going to move on to the next question. So I think we talked a lot about like what we really enjoyed about the college and the new things that are really exciting and fun, but I think it's also important to look at the other side of things. So looking back, even like in a broad perspective of like your audition process or even like present day, like maybe the classes you're taking or stuff like that. Is there anything that you would think, maybe I would adjust this if I did this one more time around? Or this is some advice I would give to high schoolers going into this process?
I will say 100% trust your gut because I've been in a lot of situations that I had to navigate by myself being a first generation college student. And also, at sometimes, like friends can only support you so much, um, which is fine because friends are meant to support you to the capacity that they're able to. But I think that I would definitely have taken more time to think about maybe even like a year before entering college, just how my situation is different from others who are in college. Because in a lot of ways, it was really hard being a commuter. I was very focused my first year. I didn't have time to go out. I never went out my first freshman year, which is like so unheard of. Like I was always at either practicing or at rehearsal. And in a lot of ways, I was really grateful for that and I improved a lot. But I think that having a support system that was a little bit more in depth to be able to deal with those differences and the shock that comes with it would have been helpful. Knowing that, like, you see a lot of kids with an apartment on campus, and knowing that, okay, well, they have an apartment, they're able to just walk to class, but really it's their parents paying for the apartment, and that was just not a possibility for me. Was really hard for me to deal with, and a lot of times I felt like I lost hope. Just feeling so alone and isolated from my situation, even though I had so many people who loved playing with me, so many teachers who um, felt like I had a future in this and that I had the potential, that the external barriers, the systemic barriers that have affected me and like my family, like for years, was a lot harder to deal with for me personally because I felt like I had already sacrificed so much. I got into my top school, but it was just thinking like long term, it was just too much for me to handle financially, and I just refused to get in that much debt. And so choosing a school that was best for me and then choosing a teacher that was best for me, not based off of what other people, like who's famous, who is performing and soloing. That's not important. What's important is about the person that's going to give you time and energy to develop your musicality and your artistry and give you space to be the musician you want to be, not the musician that they have preconceived for you is vital. And this is not even just for music; it's for everything. For any major that you want to be, if you have an idea and you have a deep truth that you know you have to fulfill in this life, you should stick to it. And like if you feel like that, like intuition like going off, you should stick to it, because a lot of times, I felt hopeless because I was looking around at other people and not looking at myself and not looking at what I was doing. And you know I felt like I never wanted to give up, because I wanted to, because I knew that music was a part of my life and that I have a deep purpose in this route. But also, at sometimes, the reflections that I was seeing around me didn't represent that at PWIs, at public institutions, in this college level. And that was really hard for me, seeing so many of my friends from high school not being in college, and so many of my family members never experiencing it and not knowing how much expenses come into graduation and how much like regalia costs. It's difficult, and there's no way of preparing for that except through experience. So just trusting yourself and trusting the time, and making sure that you have thought out everything before you go on to college and make this huge step and this huge commitment. Make sure that you're sure on it. And even if it takes longer, that's fine. There's no time limit on education, even if you get your degree. There's so many people that get their degrees and are still learning, and active musicians that practice to this day and are incredible. So I just think it's really about trusting yourself and knowing yourself in this time.
Melinda, that was so well said. I couldn't agree more. I think absolutely, first and foremost, put yourself and your well-being first. Throughout the college search and application process, I want to talk about the college search process. Like this is going off of what Melinda said. She was getting at it, but like really be meticulous with your research. Don't kind of give up halfway through learning about a school, and like make your decision based off of a couple factors that you've explored from that school. Maybe, at least in my public high school, Masterman, in the school district, our counselors gave us this really helpful sheet that said, okay, is this school going to be a good fit for you in 3 different ways: socially, academically, and financially. And I mean, within those 3 categories, there are like myriad factors that you can base your decision off of. But really, like, think about it. Am I going to be, like, am I going to find my kinds of people at this place? Am I going to be able to enjoy the academic work that I'm doing, knowing that I won't graduate with a load of debt that I'll never be able to pay off? And then am I going to have access to learning opportunities that I've been waiting for? Because I know that for me was like my biggest, the biggest impetus I had for applying to Princeton University. I wanted like a liberal arts education with also an excellent program in molecular biology research, with also opportunities for music making and performance and all of that. So that kind of all came together, and then the financial and the social aspects seemed to be a decent fit for me as well. But yeah, it took a lot of planning, and with being meticulous comes starting early. So juniors, like, please start actually listening to your school counselors when they tell you you have to start looking at colleges, you have to start writing your Common App essay, you have to like start getting your music auditions prepared, and all of that, because it takes time, and I promise you it's going to be so much less stressful, so much just enjoyable and exciting for you rather than anxiety inducing if you start the process early, and you can really be sure that you've given yourself enough time to like make informed decisions, because the worst feeling in the world, I say, would have to be like going to a school and realizing that this is just not the place for you, and knowing that you might have been able to make a better decision had you given yourself more time. So yeah, just like, with that being said, also don't burden yourself with too much stress. This is not an enormous decision you have to make. It is one that you can make in the best way possible, but if it doesn't turn out to be the school of your dreams, or if you don't get into the school of your dreams, in the grand scheme of life, you can use this as a stepping stone toward, places that you would rather be. So, college is not the end all be all at all. But definitely, as Malinda said, it is a huge commitment of both time, money, and yourself, right? So, give yourself time to make a good decision about it, one that you can feel proud of yourself for making.
A couple of things I'd like to add. One, or really just generally for both of these, I think it's really important to get to know yourself as you continue to grow. So recognizing that who you are is not who you are always going to be. Like the way you look is going to change, your interests are going to change, what motivates you is going to change. But every step of the way, it's important to really ask yourself, what do I want? What do I want from this experience? What do I want from this relationship with my mentor, with my professor, with my teacher, with my friends? And what do you want from your education, from the investment that you're making in your education? Not everyone has to or is going to be making six figures when they leave school, but that's definitely something that we can get really caught up about and thinking that we have to be doing this, or like all of these different things, because all of the external factors and pieces of information are swaying us in one way or another. So I think really focusing on cutting out the noise around you and being honest with yourself and learning how to do that over time. For me, things like journaling helps with that. I quite literally ask myself, what do I want my life to look like in the next 5 years, or in the next 2 years, or next semester? You'll constantly be changing, and you'll meet people who will help sway you into different directions and interests, but not saying you shouldn't have yourself open to new experiences and things like that, but really focusing on being an active decision maker in your life and knowing that you're doing everything with intention, because especially once you're in school, it's really easy to just follow the current. But if that's not what you want for yourself, then are you really growing? And then similar to that is really learning what motivates you. Right now, most of you probably are sitting in a room that is owned by your parents, or maybe you're in school and your teachers are there, and all of these different people in your life who have a lot of control over the things you do, maybe even the things you wear and how you speak and all of this other stuff. And eventually you reach a point where mom, dad, and this teacher are not there every day when you wake up. And, for a lot of people, they get to college and waking up in the morning becomes a lot harder, and being places on time becomes a lot harder when you don't have someone telling you, you need to get up. You don't have, in my classes at this point, about half of them require attendance. And then the other half show up when you do. You ideally show up to every class, but you're not going to fail the class if you don't show up. You fail the class if you fail the midterm and the final. So even things like attendance in class isn't even required in certain classes that you take, but really knowing what is motivating you to do this and to be successful. Is it going to be an intrinsic motivator? Like, is this something that, for example, if you're really passionate about your major and you want an internship over the summer in the same field that the class you're taking is in, that's going to motivate you to do well. Sometimes you're motivated by the deadline of next week to get the essay and start it today. Some people get motivated by it being due last week, so now they're going to start it today. College is a fun time. But what really, I think it's just really important to know that you are going to be pulled in so many different directions. And every day you wake up, you may not want to study, you may not want to do your homework or practice or go to the gym or hang out with your friends. But you also know that these are things in your life that if you want to have a balanced life, you want to prioritize at some point. So figuring out, what's going to make it so that I can do the things I need to do so that I can do the things I want to do, and learning to draw that line with yourself, I think is a really important skill to exercise and to continue to do. I'm sure you already do that. If you're in this Zoom call, you very clearly are concerned about your well-being, your future, and your goals. And I can't say that it gets easier to do that, but I can say that when you have more of your priorities in line and you know what's going to motivate you to keep going, then you can really start to, see the difference. That's probably true. That's definitely true. I'm not going to tell you when my last essay was due, but I haven't started it. Start things ahead of time.
Yeah, stop exposing us. Keep that part a secret.
All right, so I just want to get moving so we can answer all the questions. Sorry in advance, my dog is just having a great time today. He's barking all over the place. So for the okay, for the people who did auditions for their majors, or if you just submitted a supplemental, I just wanted to ask, how were the months leading up to your audition? Like, how did you structure practicing your pieces and all the excerpts that you had to play? And then even on the day of the audition, how did that feel for you?
All right, I did auditions. They weren't fun, and except for when they were over. So the process was something I think I was very prepared to do. Like I started junior year. At that point, I already known I wanted to go to a more competitive program for performance. So I put that in the back of my mind and in the front of my mind, and pretty much, every day leading up to it, I understood that the music I'm playing now and practicing now is going to be heard by all of the schools I auditioned for. So that meant looking on the website, seeing the audition requirements, and just figuring out what repertoire am I playing, because most schools require something different, but also similar to what other schools require. So just being really conscious that I'm not making myself learn extra music when I don't have to. And that was really helpful. So I pretty much had the same rep list for every school I applied for and auditioned for. And yeah, that helped a lot. Also, communicating my goals with my private teacher. It's easy to assume that your teacher knows what you want to do, but it's not always obvious, and it's never, I don't think it's safe for even your teacher to assume, but really being clear with what your goals are to your teacher, to your college counselors, so that they know how to best help and support you through the process as well. And then after that, it's all on you. You just got to put in the time. And in many ways, you're the only person who has control over that. Of course, there are always going to be reasons why you did not practice yesterday. There is always going to be a reason why you cannot practice today. But also keep in mind what your end goal is. And there aren't, not to say you can't take a day off, but you really got to be true with that. And one of the hardest things to do is to practice when you don't feel like it. But it's one of those things that we all got to do sometimes. So I think really being true with my goal and keeping that in the back of my mind as I'm preparing, not to the point that it's like looming over me, but so that I know, like, my eyes are on the prize. this one day of practice didn't go how I wanted it to or how I thought it would. But also I'm going to be doing the same thing next week and the week after that and the week after that, and eventually it will get better. So trusting that process, because one of the beautiful things about the work we do as musicians is that practicing works. There's just no way around it. If you spend the time, it will get better. So trusting the work and the preparation you're doing, I think is really helpful, especially once you get there. And during the actual audition season, that's where like the blood really starts to boil, because you have to balance the whole, maybe you're working on other repertoire. Like my senior year of high school, I had played in All Cities Concerto competition. I was playing a concerto at Kappa. I was playing 2 different concertos a week apart from each other. And then all of my auditions were sprinkled in between that. So I had a bunch of music that I just had to keep under my fingers. I had to keep in my ear. So even when I wasn't practicing the excerpts or the etudes that I was playing in auditions, I was listening to them. I'm listening to myself a lot. Well, that's something that I definitely wish I did a lot more of when I was in high school. And I wish I still got to do a lot more of it now. But recording yourself and just learning to listen objectively, not saying, oh, I sucked there, or I messed up there, or that went well, but this note was sharp. I rushed through those 2 measures. I like how I used my air for this section. And just stating what happened and being honest about that. And then using your ears. Usually, at this point in our development, once you're in high school, you have your eyes set on going to school and still playing your instrument. You know what your instrument sounds like when it's being played well. Not to say just do it, but I think once you're taking it seriously, you know what's missing. There aren't any secrets, but really being able to listen to yourself. And the same way, like, if you hear a recording of your voice, your first instinct is always going to be ew. And then what's next? You'll probably listen to your playing and go, ah, and then let that fade away, and then listen again, and then listen again. And then you start to hear your true sound and not like your mind's filter saying, this is what I really sound like, or, this was great, and that's it. But yeah, just being honest with yourself in that process and saying, what do I sound like? What do I want to improve with this? What do I want to make sure I keep up and on track? Because you may have also found with your instrument, it's not like riding a bike. You take 2 days off and you are going to sound like it. So just really being sure you're keeping up all of the good work you're doing on top of improving. And then just like relaxing during, like after all of my auditions, I traveled like to both coast and the Midwest for my auditions. One thing I did after every single one of them is, no matter how good or bad it went, I got frozen yogurt or ice cream after all of my auditions, because I knew that no matter how well or not well I played, I was going to feel better after eating ice cream. So yes, a child. But if you ever come to Cleveland, Mitchell's is the place to go. If you're ever in San Francisco, they have a few different really great frozen yogurt spots. Yeah, all that stuff. So like literally that was a part of my research. Once it's like, all right, I know where I'm going. Now let's figure out where I'm going afterwards. So just like working hard and then drawing the line and saying, the week before your audition, you're probably not going to improve on anything. That's the best you can do, is keep up the good work and make sure everything's still there. But just really trusting that process and the hard work that you've already put in, I think will take you a long way.
For me, I actually went through a crisis year, or like an identity crisis the year before the end of junior year. I was like preparing to go to all these places. I had visited a lot of colleges. Actually, I specifically visited Oberlin, and it was just not the place for me. Like, not it at all. Not because of the school, just because of the teacher. I just didn't really mesh well. Um, and I think that I got very discouraged because she was telling me to do things that I had never heard in my life from another flute player, and I thought I was going crazy. And there was like a lot of people. As a flute player, I think there's a lot of competition, and it's very intimidating. Same way it is for like violinist and those big instruments that a lot of people play. Um, but I think that after I came back from my summer festival, I was just like, yeah, there's literally nothing else I would do. I'm just being dramatic, and I can't see myself doing anything other than music. And so I took the summer to find myself actually. And then when I came back from that summer, I was just on go. I got into PYO. I was first chair for All City. Like, I had a concerto with Kappa as well, and I had to be very on top of my time because I was a commuter. So I live in Northeast Philadelphia, and took me about 2 hours to get to school every day, to and from. Um, and would get up. I would already wake up at like 5 or 6, I think, and then the senior year I woke up at 5 every morning, and I got to school an hour early to make sure that no matter what happened in my day, I always had an hour under my belt. Every single morning, I always practiced before school, so I was in there like 6:40, and the janitor's like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "Hey, friend, what's going on?" And it was just the thing. I was just always practicing in the morning. And then I was able to arrange my schedule that I had a couple free hours during the day. So I would always make sure I got another hour during the school day. And then that would leave me about an hour or two when I came home. And that was the hardest. The hardest always for me was when I came home because at that point I had been out for 12, 14 hours and then you had to practice. And I would always end up taking a nap and then falling asleep and waking up at 1. So I think that being like really strict with yourself, I knew myself. I knew that waking up early and getting that hour in was going to be crucial for me. And it just made playing flute almost like part of my schedule. It made like to this day I feel weird when I don't warm up in the morning because I just don't. It's almost like taking a shower for me. Like I just don't feel fully comfortable. I feel lazy and like not proactive and just kind of sad because I really look forward to doing like my long tones in the morning and like using that to just center myself and not be critical. Um, to really, make sure that I felt at ease with my instrument. So I think that we really neglect um, how um, how important it is to make practicing just feel like a practice, like something that you practice in your life. And that's what music became through that for me, through pushing myself to wake up at 5 in the morning to go practice at Kappa. It made it a lot better for me. It made me feel a lot more secure in my musicianship. It made me feel a lot more secure in the path I was choosing. And now it's just part of what I do. And I think that creating a practice schedule for auditions, um, I don't know, it's so hard answering this question as like a senior that's like about to perform her senior recital because it's like you just practice. Like at this point, you just get over it. You're like, I just need to practice, and it's like it's not a hassle because it's like this is how I make money. Like this is how I get gigs. This is how I teach. I don't want to be a teacher that doesn't know what they're teaching. I don't want to be a performer that doesn't know what they're playing. And I've performed with people who don't have that mindset. I've been a person um like when I was younger that didn't have that mindset. And so like when I go into an audition, I think I'm just showing up as Malinda. And you shouldn't always have to put up this I guess like performer front. Sometimes for me it didn't work. For me I can't create. I know that there's like a lot of boosting that some people do, which I think is great if it works for them. But for me, I felt always most comfortable when I would go and perform and feel like I was just expressing and communicating to the audience what was true to me. And that's what I felt with auditions. I wanted to make it so ingrained in me that it felt like I was just talking and like I was just having a conversation with someone through music. So making it part of like my schedule, making it a part of like my daily routine just made auditions seem a lot better. Also taking lessons is really important, sadly. It's kind of a scam, but it's very important for you to make that connection with your teacher or the teachers that are at the schools and for them to recognize you. If you have those lessons, make sure that if you have it before your audition, you incorporate whatever they say. So that sometimes I was told to do something for my FARA by Mark Sparks at DePaul, and I was told to do something completely different at Temple. So that means making sure that you're keeping that in mind. So I actually had like a couple copies of my audition music, one for Temple, one for DePaul if I had my lesson, and make sure that I was on top of that. And yeah, the biggest advice that helped me though was just making it intrinsic to my day, making it a part of my personality, just like the person that like I don't know woke up and plays flute, and it was like breakfast for me. So just making it a part of your life is the most valuable thing you could do. Because I've been through some practice ruts, but I always have that hour warm up to like keep me from struggling so hard.
All right, everyone, I am going to hop over from now transitioning from the college conversation to more about YAC specifically. So, just in general, how do you think YAC has contributed to the skills that you have today and that you're still using in your college daily life? And if any, do you guys have like a key memory from YAC?
I remember the Philly Orchestra events we would put on. We would have like a night at the orchestra, and it would be an hour beforehand. We would have snacks, and it was like a little networking thing before you go to the orchestra. That was always really fun, and talking to board members. It's like I don't know, you feel like a little adult when you're in YAC, and it's like really cool to see how those skills transfer when you're an adult because they're so valuable and true. Like events, that's yeah, making an event is something you're gonna have to do if you're going into performance or if you're going into any field really. Like events happen, and you know being organized and being respectful of other people and their ideas and where they're coming from is important, and learning to do that in a professional setting is important. So having the space and to do that was always really cool, and to do stuff that we always felt inclined to do. I was the secretary my first year, and then I think I was the president in my first year of college. So yeah, it was always really nice and interesting to see the different roles and how Project 440 really values your voice and makes you feel heard.
I definitely agree with Melinda. A lot of like advocacy practice, like especially within YAC, I kind of like learned for and like did a lot in college. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, how'd you do that? Like, how are you so like good at that?" And I'm just like, yeah, I had to work on it. So that was really nice. My favorite YAC memory, I would definitely say the music and colors, and like just the meetings. Honestly, I didn't always have like the best days at school, but like if I enter a YAC meeting, I'm like, all right, it's not so bad, or like things do get better. So yeah, thank you guys for that.
I think for me, like just learning how to talk about difficult subjects with people was something that I learned and something that I use a lot like here in college now. I think like I don't know, just in general, people are more open to talk about tough things in college, and being able to do that comfortably here was something that was really important for me.
Yeah, for me, there's a lot of what everyone else has said. I think especially event planning, being able to just join a group of people or a team, especially like I do a lot of group work in academic settings and professional settings. And so just having had the experience of going through the process of event planning, not just here's your task and complete it, but actually having a process outlined for structure and how to assign roles, how to delegate work, how to make a run a show, and like all of those more specific things that essentially have given me a template for that I can apply to any team that I work on can be really helpful. And I think it's very noticeable. I've learned that it's something that's very noticeable about how I work because people point it out to me, both professors and other people who I work with, just like, wow, you like actually know how to organize. And that just wouldn't have happened if I hadn't had experienced that in YAC. And then another thing that I learned directly, more like indirectly and over time, is how to draw the line between work and play. And I think it's because I didn't, yeah, if you look at Malinda's face, it says a lot. It's because I didn't do that when I was in YAC. I wasn't particularly good at cutting it out. I still like did the things I needed to do. But yeah, as I've grown, I've like really reflected on a lot of things that I've said, that I've done, and Malinda can't keep an inside joke a joke. My goodness. But yeah, I think this is case in point enough. But there are things that I really had to learn I just had to grow. I had to mature and remind myself that like, all right, I was a 16-year-old when I was 16 and I acted accordingly. And now I am not. And really just using my judgment and like listening to that voice in my head when it says, should I say that? If I've had to question it, probably not. So really being able to draw that line with myself and also setting that standard in a group. And I think that's where it has really become helpful because people look to me as a leader and I have to respond to that. And sometimes that response is learning how to respond to things that I don't agree with, learning how to ignore things that are said and not completely derail the entire group because it was funny, or at least it could have been interpreted as such. So just being able to kind of set a hard boundary for a standard of professionalism and still taking time to like, have a laugh. I think there's nothing wrong with getting a little off track in a meeting. Like, it's okay. No one's gonna lose a limb if everything doesn't get done in the hour. But just really being just growing up, I think having had like data points to look back to in my life where it's like, I probably shouldn't have responded that way. Or if I come across a similar situation, I will then respond like this. So just having that experience and being able to learn from mistakes. One of the best things I think that YAC did was give me opportunity to make mistakes and learn from them later on. So, there are going to be a lot of people in college who are doing things that you have already learned. And so take it as a win, but also take that as a sign that sometimes you are going to be the standard for what is responsible, what is organized, what does it mean to show up prepared, because these things mean different things everywhere you go, and especially when you're starting out working in a new group or a new team. It's a very sensitive situation. So being able to just kind of set the standard and move forward together is something that I think can take you very far, and that you get while you're in YAC.
All right, guys, you answered the questions amazing. It was so wonderful to hear from all of you, especially because you guys were a part of YAC, so I feel like we can all connect to you and kind of see a little bit of ourselves in such amazing people that we aspire to be. So I'm going to hand it off to Tino to wrap up.
Okay, yeah. So thank you once again to all of our speakers for that wonderful discussion. And just to close off, in case anyone is interested in staying connected and learning about future events, first of all, Project 440 is on Instagram, so you can follow at Project 440 for updates. And I believe they also post about the music and color events, so that's a good way to stay updated if you want. To participate in these events again in the future. You can read more about the Youth Advocacy Council at this link. It's on the Project 440 website. If you go to project440.org and then navigate to the Youth Advocacy Council page, you'll find a blog and information about us. If you have any questions or comments about this event, the speakers, or anything in general, please email yak@project440.org. And finally, please register for our next events using the Zoom registration in the future. Doing so helps us collect emails to reach out with more information and further expand our impact. And with that, I would like to thank you all for coming and wish you all